All right, this is one I've had many issues with. I'm Storytelling Ron, Storytellers. Okay, so let's get right to it. On Not to Be, this came out, which is cool but not cool because, Peter Heck here, he says on Not to Be, he says he's a U.S. history and government teacher for 2 decades. I'm assuming that's in a public school, but he never knew about this, and I've known about this since the beginning of my conservative punditry. So Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, and he wrote several drafts, and one of them included the ending of slavery. He wanted to end slavery. King George III, has waged cruel war against human nature itself, violating its most sacred rights of life and liberty in the persons of a distant people who never offended him, captivating and carrying them into slavery in another hemisphere, or to incur miserable death in their transportation thither. So the American Revolution, a big part of it was ending slavery. A big part of it was all the manipulation by the left or the Democrats, or the tyranny of King George and the Britain. I just refer to them all the same thing. That they just wanted control over the colonies. They wanted more control. They wanted more taxes, more government. And that was the fight. And the fight was to end slavery. The Bible Society was starting. The abolition movement was starting. Thomas Jefferson was a part of all of this. And I know there's so much lies on the left concerning this. And there's so much that they can grab onto because of doubts. The founding fathers had many doubts. They had many Christian doubts. They did not have Google. They didn't have ChatGPT. They cannot, during the middle of the week, chat and get affirmation of their faith. There was no apologetics. There was no creation science. There was no architectural affirmation of the Bible. During this period too, there are many who were just making up crap about Christianity to undermine it. Just make up shit. I mean, they just were. I think I'm gonna swear a bit. I don't know. But just because I just get a little frustrated with all this, just because I'm an idiot. But Thomas Jefferson wanted to end slavery, and it is in his work. And let me just show you these books that I've read and how devastating they are. This book, oops, let me go here. This book is called American History in Black and White by David Barton. And yes, David Barton is an awesome historian who's not part of the academic brainwashed circle of the left. So they attack him online everywhere. I'm sure if you go ChatGPT, all the AI will be able to find is attacks on David Barton and undermining him. But this one is about how the Democrat Party and the KKK wiped out the GOP in the South. And yes, 2/3 were black and 1/3 were white. To say that the KKK lynched all blacks is incorrect. To say that they lynched all GOP is correct. The Democrat KKK did not go after blacks. They went after GOP to destroy that political party. If you look at the governors, and mainly the governors, but some of the others, from 1860 to 1960 to 2000, it's like Democrats rule with an iron fist in the South. It's poor, it's backwoods, all that. Only in the last 20 years, maybe, has the Republicans been able to make headways, conservatives, and things are happening and hopping in the South. But before then, the Democrats had wiped out all of this. Now, this started right after the Civil War. Blacks were becoming, these are all like in I think the House of Representatives, all Republicans. This shows actual documents and illustrations from then, quotes. It brings up quotes, and David Barton is very important. He believes in footnotes, endnotes, bibliographies, all that, resources, and all of this. And you don't even want to read this because of the genocide that was going on against the Grand Old Party trying to organize voting in the South. I mean, there's no movie on that, and it was tens of thousands were slaughtered, attacked, not just lynched. The lynching was about 5,000-6,000. And they were the political leaders, the ones trying to make a change. But then tens of thousands were wiped out if they tried to go vote in like Republican areas, and this documents it. So here's the one on Jefferson, and here's the one he did on the original intent of the Constitution and the resources. Because when they wrote the Constitution, they were trying to explain to the public the Constitution and what it means, and giving more thought. They did the Federalist Papers. The Federalist Papers were like printed in newspapers or whatever at the time to explain everything, like to further extrapolate on it. And of course, no one's being taught about that. And this is all about stuff about the original intent of of our founding. And then this is the Jefferson Lies, exposing the myths you've always believed about Thomas Jefferson. And the problem is the left continually rewrites history. They won't use original sources. They won't understand the context of history. They're chronological snobs in their air-conditioned room where they can go Google whatever and do hentai porn on the side or whatever, to get whatever they want. Whereas these guys were in dark rooms at night, no Netflix, no gaming. They had their brandy, they had their candle or their oil lantern or whatever, and they drank their brandy and they wrote their letters to each other that were 10 or 20 pages long. So there was plenty to write in there where they would even have questionable Christianity, doubting their faith. I am going to give these guys the benefit of the doubt, and they're all Christian. I know he tried to rewrite the Bible to make it nicer for Indians. He tried to write a Bible for Indians to evangelize, and I think he tried to write whatever. But I can understand that because he doesn't have the apologetics, the true fellowship, where we all are working together to better understand the word. These guys were in their thing. They were stuck in their thing and drinking their brandy and their whiskey. These guys were drinkers, by the way. What else you can do at night in the cold of New England? You eat, you drink when people visit, and then when they're gone, there's plenty of days where you're alone at night or whatever. And I do remember reading, I don't know if it was in here or wherever I read it, but how, especially when he was younger, he would go out to where the blacks were, the slaves, and they would have like a hoedown or whatever, around the fire, and they had music, and they were all Bible believers, and they played their music and played the blues or whatever the style of music was, and he joined in on that. Him and I don't remember the details, but it's pretty fascinating and not told in movies or shows. And that could have been he could have gotten a mistress or whatever based on that, because there was a lot of partying going on even amongst the slaves. And here's the thing: the Jefferson and Washington, under the Democrats then, the pre-Democrats, were forced to have their slaves. They were forced. They were inherited. They could not. The Democrats made a law that you couldn't free your slaves. It was illegal to free your slaves. Why? Because they didn't want people freeing the slaves. They wanted them to be slaves. And if they were freed, I believe they had to leave the southern states, because Democrats, let me look at Democrats today. That's how they act. So when Washington died, he let his slaves go free. That was in his will, because he couldn't do it when he inherited them. And the only thing he could do was sell them off, and he didn't do that. And him and Jefferson both went broke trying to keep his black slaves together as families. He didn't want to sell them off, but when Washington died, he freed his slaves. And then guess what the Democrats did? They changed the law, so that when you die, they're sold off. They're given back to the state, who then sells them off. That's how pathetic and petty and evil is in the Democrats. And I don't care. They're evil. They're evil today. They're evil then. And they're lying about him. They're lying about him in Washington, calling them slave owners, when they're the ones that forced them to be slave owners. And he did this. He tried everything he could to end slavery. There was even an account where he was so frustrated in a letter because, and imagine this, they had a vote. They had a vote to free slavery, and in the state. And he was so hopeful. I'm sure I read it in this. So hopeful about this, they missed it by one vote, and he was like devastated. And the vitriol and the nastiness of the Democrats in the local governance just was terrible. And him writing a Declaration of Independence, freedom, fighting for freedom. The Democrats were willing, in the South, were willing to give that up to keep their slavery. So they were willing to be slaves to keep their slaves and not fight for freedom if Jefferson kept that in there. That's who we're up against. They murder the unborn. They want slavery. They will vote for Islam. They will vote for Marxism. What can you do about it? You can rebuke them. That's it. We're not here to kill anybody. We're not here to shoot anyone in the neck. We're not here to, I don't even there's a whole recent news about the political posting this stupid thing about the young Republicans doing the racist tweets. I just don't care. I want us to mock them. I don't really care. I don't even care if you just say racist things to them. It doesn't really matter. Calling a black person a monkey to me is silly. I don't believe in that crap, that evolution crap. So I don't believe that a black person comes from a monkey. I believe God created blacks and whites and all that. So the whole monkey thing to me is silly. You know, if I say a black person acts like a monkey, I think that's silly. I don't think that's racist at all, because I don't believe in evolution. That's where that comes from. That's where that comes from. The ones that believe in evolution believe in that. They believe in Darwin and what he said about blacks and Africans and primitives or whatever. I don't believe in that crap. I believe, and I'll do another video on this, I believe the blacks are inferior in Africa because they didn't have the church. For, you know, in the Middle East, didn't have the church. That's why I believe they're inferior. The Slavic countries didn't have the church. That's why I believe they're inferior. China and Asia didn't have the church. They were wiped out. The church never rooted itself in those areas, so I think they're inferior. White Europe was the only place the church was successful since about 200 AD. So it takes hundreds, thousands of years for it to actually have an effect. And in the 14th, 15th, 16th century, slowly it was starting to have an effect. 17th, 18th, you know, was an explosion of the Renaissance, Age of Reason, and all that. That's because the church was the foundation and quelled our sinful nature. The church quelled our sinful nature, all of us. Black, white, brown, yellow, purple, whatever. And the church got wiped out in Africa by Islam. The church got wiped out in Middle East by Islam. So that's my little take on this little Thomas Jefferson thing. It's pretty frustrating, or it's pretty amazing too that he, you know, I've taught U.S. history and government for 2 decades, and this fact stuns me. It embarrasses me and frustrates me. Of course it does. Like David, you got to go to David Barton Wall Builders. Wall Builders is the site. You can get some really good American history that is not, you know, that is Christian. He's a Christian. His son runs it now, maybe. I'm not sure. I haven't gone in a while. I'm kind of moving on to other things, but this was really great for me. Actually, I'm going to show you some other books just to finish this off here about politics that I just found in my path to Christianity and conservative. This one is called Conservative Comeback to Liberal Lies. It's an older book, but it's just a nice, it sort of has everything in a, it kind of categorizes comebacks, you know, in chapters and in little categories here, and really kind of summarizes, you know, it has a claim number 3, claim number 4, whatever, on different categories, and then our response to it. So it just kind of helps. It's a really good way of kind of breaking down. You know, it's a little older, but you know, still the same good stuff. I'm just going to go through a few. Oh, here's another one here. Oh, Dinesh D'Souza is awesome. Dinesh D'Souza, I mean. What's Great About America is a really great book. It's really good. This one, really good for you to have your kids read these two. Here, What's So Great About Christianity? These are really good for high school kids, your middle school kids. Make them read these. Get them a guitar if they finish it, or give them a guitar. But they're pretty quick reads, in my opinion. They're not super thick and dense a little bit. This is, I should do another video, which I will. But this one, Politically Incorrect Guide to History. This one's a really good for homeschooling your high school kids. Have them read this as an additional supplement, because it's kind of like broken up into little simple blurbs and categories that really go against the woke's crap, you know, and gives you some good stuff on that. It's on Amazon, the Politically Incorrect Guide. This is you got to inoculate your kids. You got to brainwash them. I just had a Christian father say, I'll talk to them when it's no, talk to them now. Brainwash them. Rant. I ranted to my daughters. And my older daughter, it was funny. When she went to high school, public high school, because she went to homeschool 2 years, but she had to go back to high school because of team sports, and they wouldn't let homeschoolers join, because that's Democrats for you. But I ranted, and then she ended up becoming, like, defending pro-life, even though, you know, she wasn't ready for that. But she ended up deciding to defend it in the class because of my rants. And then she ended up making me homeschool her because she got sick and tired of what she was hearing. Before that, she did send me one on the science class. She sent me a picture because I ranted on evolution and creation. She sent me a picture because I told her evolution, all they use is artwork. They don't use actual real evidence like real animals. They won't do that because we'll all scoff at them. They won't use dogs, for instance, to prove evolution, because we're going to look at a chihuahua and a wolf and go, they're just dogs. They're not going to change in a mouse or a rat or something. And we know chihuahuas are much younger, a newer breed than wolves. So there's de-evolution. We see lots of information out of from runt to runt to runt. We do see that. We see degradation, but we do not see an improved species in the species. from the ones that we've known have been around for forever. So she sent me this picture like, oh, look, Dad, another drawing. So that was awesome. And then she finally said, Dad, I want to homeschool. And she literally slammed the door on me and went to school because I dropped her off. And I was like, oh, okay. I was yelling out the window, fine, okay. She goes, I want to get homeschooled. She went to school, and then I ended up giving up everything, my filmmaking career here in Hollywood. I was working on a second film. I had film agents. I was an AFM. I gave it up because I wanted my love for my daughters was more important. Plus, my wife's a fashion director, so. But yeah, I'm so grateful to the Lord for making me give it up, because I know I'm going to confess this here, right here and I've told my wife this. Everyone in my family knows this. And I know this about me. If I would have been successful as a filmmaker here in LA, I would have left my wife and daughters. I'm pretty sure that's the kind of person, I would have left them. So thank you, Lord, for giving me the wisdom or making me even more stupid to choose my daughters over my own, pursuit of that success. So I'm grateful. I have wonderful daughters. They drive me nuts. I drive them even crazier now, though. Revenge is sweet, but it's been good. So, and I've had wonderful things from them, even recently as adult daughters, and me helping them and them coming to me for help and stuff like that. So, and their faith is good, and they're coming to my church, checking it out, kind of thing, but they got their own little churchy things they're going. But anyway, so that's life. That's my rant on Thomas Jefferson, the founding fathers. And I'm not ashamed of any of this. I'm not ashamed of crusades, witch trials, Inquisition, none of that. I'm not ashamed of the Christianity, because we're being lied to. We're being fed lies. They're not telling us everything. There are resources out there to find this information. Go check out any of these ones that I got. They're very, to me, joyful and easy reads, if that's your avenue, if that's your research, your desire. But again, these ones right here are really cool. Here's one for science, and here's these politically they're really good for, like, especially with your kids, like talking to them about stuff and giving them blurbs on things, like reading a couple of these and then telling them the next day. Like, just feed them. You gotta rant to your kids, in a good, positive way about stuff. Oh, and the Dinesh D'Souza ones are really good for you to read, or them. He has some great stuff in there. All right. In the game of life, everybody, roll holy dice.